The man standing on my porch knew about the tiny crescent-shaped birthmark behind my daughter's left ear. And that was the exact moment my entire life started falling apart. Before that night, I thought I understood exactly who I was. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 39 years old, a former paramedic, the kind of man who built his life around routine because routine felt safe. I wasn't rich. I wasn't particularly exciting either. But I had a quiet life I genuinely loved. A stable job repairing medical equipment for local clinics, a small suburban house with creaky kitchen floors, a wife I thought I knew, and an 8-year-old daughter who made every exhausting part of adulthood feel worth surviving. Lily was the center of my entire world without me even realizing when that happened. Somewhere between bedtime stories, scraped knees, school recitals, and Saturday morning pancakes shaped like animals, fatherhood stopped being a role and became my identity. Everything I did revolved around that little girl. Which is why what happened afterward nearly destroyed me. Because nobody warns you that the people you trust most can look you directly in the eyes for years while hiding something big enough to ruin your entire understanding of your own family. At first, I honestly thought he was insane. Some random middle-aged guy standing outside my house at nearly 9 o'clock at night while rain poured hard enough to blur the streetlights behind him. He looked exhausted. Not drunk. Not homeless. Just worn down in a way that made him seem older than he probably was. Dark jacket soaked through. Hands shaking slightly. Eyes locked directly past me into the house like he was searching for someone. Then he asked, "Is Lily home?" "Not your daughter. Not the little girl." He used her name immediately. That alone made my stomach tighten. I stepped halfway outside and pulled the door behind me before he could see into the living room. "Who are you?" "My name is Marcus Hale." His voice sounded rough like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. "I need to talk to you about your daughter." I almost shut the door right there. Look, if you're a parent, you understand this instinct immediately. The second a stranger starts talking about your child like that, every protective alarm in your body goes off at once. My brain already started calculating whether I needed to call the police. "I think you should leave," I told him. But Marcus didn't move. Instead he said quietly, "She likes strawberry Pop-Tarts even though they make her nauseous afterward because she keeps eating too fast." I froze. Then he kept going. "She sleeps with one sock on because she says both feet get too hot." My chest tightened. "And there's a birthmark behind her left ear shaped like a crescent moon." For about 3 seconds I genuinely forgot how to breathe. Because none of those details existed online. Vanessa barely posted Lily on social media in the first place. And the birthmark? Almost nobody knew about that except immediate family. I stared at him while rainwater dripped off the edge of his beard. "What the hell do you want?" I finally asked. Marcus looked at me for a long moment before saying the sentence that destroyed my marriage. "I think your wife stole my daughter 8 years ago." I should have punched him. Honestly, I probably would have if Lily hadn't suddenly appeared behind the front door at the exact wrong moment. "Daddy?" I turned immediately. She stood there in oversized pajamas holding her stuffed rabbit against her chest. Her brown curls were a mess from sleep and she looked confused more than scared. Then Marcus saw her. And something inside that man completely broke. I saw it happen in real time. His entire face collapsed like he'd spent years holding himself together for this exact moment and suddenly couldn't anymore. He took one tiny step forward before stopping himself. Lily tilted her head. "Who's that?" I answered too fast. "Nobody, sweetheart. Go upstairs." But Marcus whispered, almost to himself, "She has Claire's eyes." The way he said it made my skin crawl. Not creepy. Worse. Heartbroken. Lily looked between us uncertainly before Vanessa appeared from the kitchen carrying a dish towel in her hands. And the second she saw Marcus, the color drained completely from her face. People always talk about dramatic reactions in movies being unrealistic. They aren't. Sometimes the human body tells the truth before the mouth can even try lying. Vanessa stopped moving entirely. The towel slipped from her fingers. Marcus stared directly at her and said quietly, "You remember me?" My wife looked like she was about to faint. I turned toward her slowly. "Vanessa?" She opened her mouth once. Closed it again. Then she grabbed Lily by the shoulders too quickly and said, "Go upstairs right now." Her voice cracked hard enough to scare Lily immediately. That was the first moment I realized this wasn't random. This wasn't some confused stranger. My daughter disappeared upstairs while the silence downstairs became unbearable. Rain hammered the roof. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Vanessa finally whispered, "You need to leave." Marcus shook his head slowly. "I spent 8 years looking for her." "You're insane." "No," he replied. "I was insane 8 years ago. Now I'm just tired." I remember feeling completely disconnected from my own body standing there between them. Like my brain couldn't organize what was happening into something logical. I looked at Vanessa. "Do you know him?" "No." Marcus laughed softly at that. Not amused. Just disappointed. "You used a different last name back then," he said. "But I knew you immediately." Vanessa's breathing became uneven. And suddenly I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. The hospital. The complications during Lily's birth. Or at least, what I thought was Lily's birth. Vanessa had always hated talking about it. Every time I brought it up, she shut down emotionally. Said it was traumatic. Said she nearly died. I stopped asking questions because I loved her and because sometimes loving somebody means respecting the things they can't talk about. But now this stranger stood inside my doorway staring at my wife like he knew secrets about her I didn't. Marcus reached slowly into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. Then he handed it to me. I looked down. My stomach dropped instantly. It was a picture of a newborn baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. A newborn baby with a tiny crescent-shaped mark behind her left ear. I heard Vanessa whisper, "No." Marcus looked at me carefully. That photo was taken 2 days before my daughter disappeared from St. Vincent Medical Center. I felt cold all over. "That's impossible," I said automatically. "I wish it was." Vanessa suddenly stepped forward and grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "Ethan, don't listen to him." But she sounded terrified. Not angry. Terrified. Marcus nodded toward her. "Ask your wife why there are no photos of her pregnant before 7 months. Ask her why she switched hospitals halfway through the pregnancy. Ask her why every record from the original maternity ward vanished." "Stop talking," Vanessa snapped. "You know I'm right." The room exploded after that. Vanessa screaming at him to leave. Marcus refusing. Me trying to understand what the hell was happening while my daughter slept upstairs completely unaware that her entire identity was apparently being questioned downstairs. Eventually I forced Marcus out of the house before neighbors started watching. But right before he walked away, he looked directly at me and said something I still hear in my head sometimes when I can't sleep. "You already know she's lying. You just aren't ready to admit it yet." Then he handed me a business card and walked into the rain. I went back inside expecting Vanessa to immediately explain everything. Instead I found her sitting at the kitchen table crying into both hands. I had never seen my wife look afraid of me before. Not once in 11 years together. But that night, she looked absolutely terrified. And deep down, before she even said a word, I think part of me already knew why. 3 days later, while Vanessa thought I was at work, I drove across town and took a DNA test in complete silence. I remember sitting in my truck afterward staring at the steering wheel for nearly 20 minutes because I already hated myself for doing it. Because Lily was my daughter. I didn't care what some stranger claimed. I raised her. I taught her how to ride a bike. I stayed awake through fevers and nightmares and school projects and bedtime stories. No test could change that. That's what I kept telling myself anyway. But 2 weeks later I opened the results alone inside my truck at 2 in the morning. And realized Lily wasn't biologically mine. I didn't go home after reading the results. I couldn't. I sat in my truck outside a closed gas station with the envelope open on the passenger seat, the dashboard lights glowing against the words that had just split my life in half. Probability of paternity, 0%. Not unlikely. Not inconclusive. 0. A number so clean it felt cruel. I read it once, then again, then a third time, as if the letters might rearrange themselves if I stared long enough. But they didn't. Lily was not biologically mine. The little girl who ran into my arms every afternoon after school, who called me dad when she was scared, who once cried because she thought I worked too much and might forget her birthday, was not mine by blood. And the worst part was not even the result itself. The worst part was realizing Vanessa had known exactly what I was going to find. When I finally pulled into the driveway, every light in the house was off except the kitchen. Vanessa was sitting at the table like she had been waiting for me the entire night. Her hair was tied back, her face pale, both hands wrapped around a mug she clearly hadn't touched. She didn't ask where I had been. She didn't ask why I looked like I had aged 10 years in one evening. She just looked at the envelope in my hand and whispered, "You did it." That was when something inside me went quiet. Not angry. Not yet. Anger would have been easier. Anger gives you somewhere to put your hands, somewhere to throw your voice. This was different. This was a hollow, cold kind of shock that made every sound in the kitchen feel too sharp. "How long?" I asked. Vanessa closed her eyes. I stepped closer and dropped the envelope on the table between us. "How long have you known?" She didn't answer. Vanessa. Her eyes opened slowly, wet but steady. "From the beginning." The sentence landed harder than the DNA result. I had expected denial. A panic attack. Maybe some wild explanation about hospital error or contaminated samples or Marcus lying. But she didn't fight it. She didn't even pretend. She sat there across from me, the woman I had trusted with everything, and admitted with one broken sentence that the last 8 years of my life had been built on something I never agreed to. I laughed once, not because anything was funny, but because my body had no idea what else to do. "From the beginning," I repeated. "So when I cut her umbilical cord?" Vanessa flinched. "When I slept in that plastic hospital chair for 2 nights because you said you couldn't be alone. When I signed the birth certificate. When my mother cried holding her first grandchild." My voice cracked before I could stop it. "You let all of us believe she was mine." "She is yours," Vanessa said quickly. "No. Don't do that." I pointed at the envelope. "Do not use the one true thing left in this room to cover the lie." Her hand started trembling around the mug. "I didn't plan it like that." "Then explain it." She looked toward the hallway, toward the stairs where Lily was sleeping. That tiny movement made me furious in a way I hadn't expected. Because even now, even after everything, she was still using Lily as the reason I couldn't raise my voice. So I lowered it instead. "Explain it before I call Marcus." Her face changed immediately. "Don't." "Why?" "Because he'll take her." I stared at her. "Is he her father?" Vanessa covered her mouth with one hand. That was answer enough. For a moment, I couldn't move. Marcus Hale, the stranger on my porch, the man I had wanted to throw into the street, was not crazy. He was not a scammer. He was a father who had been standing 10 feet away from his daughter while I protected the woman who stole her. Vanessa began talking then, but not in a clean way. It came out broken, twisted around sobs she kept trying to swallow. Years ago, before Lily, before the house, before the family photos on the hallway wall, Vanessa had been pregnant. Not with my child. This was before we were married, during the year we had separated after a brutal argument about money and work and whether either of us was becoming the person the other had promised to love. She told me she had moved back in with her sister for a while. She told me she had needed space. What she had not told me was that she had been involved with someone else during that separation. Briefly, she said. Messy, she said. A mistake, she said. Marcus. I almost walked out then. But she kept going. She found out she was pregnant weeks after Marcus left for another contract overseas. She was scared, alone, ashamed, and too proud to tell either of us the truth. Then something went wrong near the end of the pregnancy. She lost the baby before delivery. She described it softly, carefully, not with detail, but with enough grief that even through my rage, I could see the wound had never closed. She said the hospital was chaotic that night. Understaffed. A storm had knocked out part of the system. Another woman, Claire Hale, had delivered a baby girl in the same ward. Claire suffered complications afterward and died before morning. Marcus was unreachable. The baby was moved between rooms during a records issue. And you took her, I said. Vanessa shook her head violently, tears slipping down her face. I held her first. I stared at her. That's what happened. A nurse brought her to me by mistake. She thought she was mine. I was half sedated, half out of my mind, and this tiny baby was placed in my arms, and for 1 second, Ethan, 1 second, the world stopped hurting. I felt sick. She had that little mark behind her ear, Vanessa whispered. And she stopped crying when I held her. So you kept her. I couldn't let go. You stole a child. She had no mother. She had a father. He wasn't there. He was grieving. So was I. Vanessa snapped, and then immediately covered her face like the sound had frightened her too. The kitchen went silent again. I looked at this woman I had loved for more than a decade and realized I didn't recognize the shape of her anymore. She wasn't only my wife. She was someone else too. Someone desperate enough to rewrite a death, a birth, a family, and call it survival. Who helped you? I asked. Her eyes shifted. There it was. Another lie waiting underneath the first. Vanessa. She swallowed. A nurse. What nurse? I don't remember. I leaned over the table, my voice almost calm. You remember everything else. What was her name? Vanessa looked down at the mug. And then she whispered, Naomi Bennett. I left the kitchen without another word. Behind me, Vanessa started crying harder, saying my name, begging me not to destroy our family. But that was the thing she still didn't understand. I wasn't the one who destroyed it. I was just the last person to find the wreckage. Upstairs, I stopped outside Lily's room. Her door was cracked open, her nightlight casting soft stars across the ceiling. She was asleep curled around her stuffed rabbit, completely innocent, completely unaware that 3 adults were about to fight over the meaning of her life. I stood there for a long time. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Did you get the test? I looked back toward the kitchen, where Vanessa's sobs had gone quiet. Then I typed the only answer I could. Yes. We need to talk. I met Marcus 3 days later in the parking lot of a diner 2 towns over because neither of us trusted the other enough to do this anywhere personal. He arrived early. I could tell because his coffee had already gone cold by the time I walked in. The man looked worse than before somehow. Dark circles under his eyes, shoulders tense, fingers drumming lightly against the ceramic mug like he was holding himself together through muscle memory alone. When I sat down across from him, neither of us spoke immediately. Then I slid the DNA results across the table. Marcus stared at the envelope but didn't touch it. His jaw tightened once. That was all. No celebration. No relief. No dramatic reaction like some father reclaiming his child after years apart. Just exhaustion. Pure, crushing exhaustion. "She's alive," he whispered eventually. I hated him a little for saying it that way. Because to him, this was hope. To me, it felt like somebody was slowly dismantling my family with surgical precision. "She's my daughter," I said carefully. Marcus nodded immediately. "I know." "No, I don't think you do." His eyes lifted to mine. "You think I came here trying to erase you? Didn't you? If I wanted to destroy your life, Ethan, I would have gone straight to the police. That shut me up." Because he was right. Instead he had shown up alone carrying an old photograph and 20 pounds of grief on his back. Marcus finally picked up the envelope. "I spent years thinking she was dead." His voice remained calm, but there was something dangerous underneath it. "Do you understand what that does to somebody? They told me there were complications during the transfer. Then records disappeared. Nurses quit. Administrators changed stories every 6 months. I hired investigators. Nobody found anything. Until now." He looked out the diner window for a second before answering. "A retired clerk from St. Vincent recognized Vanessa from a school fundraiser photo online last year." Cold moved through my chest. That meant this thing had not suddenly appeared. Marcus had probably been watching from a distance for months. Maybe longer. "You could have contacted us earlier." I wanted to be wrong. That answer bothered me more than anger would have. I leaned back slowly. "There's a nurse involved. Naomi Bennett." For the first time since I sat down, Marcus reacted visibly. His expression darkened immediately. "Jesus Christ. You know her. She disappeared 2 weeks after Claire died." Claire. His wife. I realized then how rarely we had actually talked about the woman at the center of this whole disaster. She had almost become background noise inside everyone else's pain. "What happened to her?" I asked quietly. Marcus rubbed his hand across his mouth once before speaking. "Claire hemorrhaged after delivery. I was overseas when the hospital called. By the time I got back, my wife was dead and my daughter was gone." He swallowed hard. "And the hospital treated me like I was unstable for refusing to let it go." For the first time since meeting him, I saw something besides determination. I saw damage. The kind that settles permanently into a person. Marcus pulled a folded document from his jacket and slid it toward me. "I hired a private investigator 6 years ago. This is everything he found before he died." I frowned. Died? Car accident. The way Marcus said it made my stomach twist. I opened the folder slowly. Hospital payroll records. Shift transfers. Security reports with missing timestamps. Incident logs. One specific name highlighted repeatedly. Naomi Bennett. And underneath it, another line. Unauthorized infant reassignment, internal review suspended. What the hell is this? I muttered. Marcus leaned closer. The hospital covered something up that night. Maybe they panicked after Claire died. Maybe they were afraid of lawsuits. I don't know anymore. But Naomi Bennett was involved. I stared at the papers while pieces started connecting in ways I didn't want them to. Vanessa had not acted alone. Which somehow made everything worse. Because one desperate woman making a horrifying decision during psychological collapse was tragic. but multiple adults helping bury it for years. That crossed into something else entirely. I drove straight from the diner to the address Marcus gave me for Naomi Bennett. Small house. Quiet neighborhood. Wind chimes on the porch. The kind of place that looked painfully ordinary considering the secrets apparently buried inside it. A woman in her 60s opened the door after my second knock. The second she saw my face, she knew exactly why I was there. People reveal guilt in strange ways. Some panic. Some lie. Naomi just looked tired. "You're Ethan," she said softly. Not a question. I felt anger rise immediately. "You know who I am. I hoped I'd never meet you." I should have walked away right there and called the police. Instead I followed her into the house because by that point, my life already felt unreal enough that normal judgment had stopped functioning. Naomi sat carefully on the couch while I remained standing. "You helped Vanessa steal Lily," I said. "No," Naomi replied quietly. "I helped a grieving woman survive the worst night of her life. Then I spent 8 years regretting it." "That's not an answer." Her eyes lifted slowly. "Because there isn't an answer that makes this acceptable." Silence stretched between us. Finally she exhaled shakily. "Your wife lost her baby hours before Claire Hale died. She completely broke psychologically. Dissociation. Trauma. Sedatives. She kept insisting the baby brought to her room belonged there." Naomi paused. "And the hospital was chaos. Systems crashed during the storm. Babies were temporarily moved between rooms. Records became confused. But you knew." "Yes. You still let her leave with Lily." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. Claire was dead. Marcus was unreachable overseas for almost 36 hours. Vanessa would not release the child. Security was already dealing with emergency transfers downstairs. And one administrator made the catastrophic decision to delay reporting the discrepancy until records could be reviewed. I stared at her in disbelief. One delay became another. Then lawyers got involved. Then people got scared. "You covered it up." Naomi nodded weakly. "At first everyone thought it could still be fixed quietly. But it wasn't. No. The room suddenly felt too small. I turned away, trying to process the scale of what I was hearing. This wasn't simply kidnapping anymore. It was negligence, corruption, fear, grief, and selfishness fused together into one massive lie that somehow managed to survive 8 entire years. Then Naomi said something that stopped me cold. "Vanessa truly believes Lily was meant to be hers." I looked back sharply. "She loved that child from the first second she held her," Naomi whispered. "That's what made this so dangerous." It stopped feeling like theft to her very quickly. I almost laughed at the insanity of that statement. Instead I asked the question that had been sitting in the back of my mind since this nightmare started. "Did Lily ever know?" "No," Naomi answered immediately. "Never. Vanessa protected that secret obsessively." Protected. That word made me sick. Before I left, Naomi handed me one final file. "You need to read this before Marcus contacts a lawyer." "What is it?" Her face tightened. "Psychiatric evaluations from the weeks after the birth." I opened the folder inside my truck 20 minutes later. Most of it was medical terminology I barely understood. But one sentence stood out instantly. "Patient demonstrates severe attachment fixation toward infant not biologically hers. Recommending immediate psychiatric intervention and supervised separation." My hand started shaking. Because Vanessa had not only known Lily wasn't hers. Professionals had warned she was mentally unstable before she ever took her home. And somehow, nobody stopped her. Vanessa disappeared with Lily 2 nights after I visited Naomi Bennett. I came home from work and immediately knew something was wrong because the house was too quiet. Not empty quiet. Hollow quiet. The kind that feels staged, like somebody carefully removed every sound before leaving. Lily's backpack was gone from the hallway hook. Vanessa's suitcase had disappeared from our bedroom closet. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter powered off beside a handwritten note with only 6 words on it. I had no other choice. That was it. No location. No apology. No explanation. I remember standing there staring at the paper while something inside my chest physically tightened hard enough to hurt. Then panic hit all at once. Real panic. Not anger. Not betrayal. Fear. Because whatever Vanessa had become over the years, she still loved Lily obsessively. And desperate people who believe they're protecting someone can become terrifying very quickly. I called her 23 times in less than an hour. No answer. Marcus arrived at the house 40 minutes later after I finally told him she was gone. The second he walked inside and saw the empty hallway, his entire expression changed. She took her. I nodded once. Marcus swore under his breath and immediately pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. Wait. He looked at me like I had lost my mind. Wait. Ethan, she kidnapped her again. The word again hit me harder than I expected. Because legally, morally, technically, he was right. But my brain refused to process Vanessa as some criminal stranger on the news. She was still the woman who packed Lily's lunches with little handwritten notes. The woman who slept curled around our daughter whenever thunderstorms scared her. The woman who once drove 3 hours overnight because Lily forgot her stuffed rabbit at a hotel. Human beings are complicated like that. Terrible actions do not erase years of ordinary love. They just poison them afterward. We don't know where she went, I said. Marcus stared at me for a second before answering quietly, you still want to protect her. No, I replied immediately. Then after a pause, I want to protect Lily. That shut him up because underneath all the tension between us, that was the one thing we both understood perfectly. The next 36 hours blurred together into one endless nightmare. Police reports. Calls. Lawyers. Old addresses. Credit card activity. Every hour without hearing Lily's voice made my chest feel tighter. I barely slept. Marcus barely spoke unless necessary. Strange as it sounds, somewhere during those 2 days, we stopped acting like rivals and started acting like 2 exhausted men trying to rescue the same child from a disaster neither of us fully understood. Then Lily called me. 3 seconds of silence passed after I answered before I heard her small voice whisper, Daddy. I nearly collapsed from relief. Lily? Baby, where are you? She's crying, Lily whispered. Mommy keeps crying. My throat tightened instantly. Are you okay? I think so. Think so. Jesus Christ. Put Mommy on the phone. I heard muffled movement. Then Vanessa's breathing. Not speaking at first. Just breathing shakily into the receiver. Finally she whispered, I didn't know what else to do. Where are you? You're going to take her from me. Vanessa. You already chose him. I chose the truth. That's easy for you to say, she snapped suddenly. You didn't carry her. You didn't hold her first. You didn't spend 8 years terrified somebody would knock on the door and destroy everything. My voice hardened. You already destroyed it. Silence. Then softer now, almost broken, I loved her, Ethan. The tragedy was that I believed her. That was the problem with this entire situation. Nobody involved was completely lying. Vanessa truly loved Lily. Marcus truly lost a daughter. I truly raised her. 3 conflicting truths trapped inside one child who had never asked for any of it. Tell me where you are, I said quietly. Vanessa hesitated for several seconds. Then she gave me the address of a small lakeside cabin 3 counties north. Marcus drove while I sat frozen in the passenger seat trying not to imagine every possible thing waiting for us there. Rain hammered the windshield almost the entire drive. Fitting somehow. This whole story seemed to happen during storms. When we finally arrived near midnight, the cabin lights were still on. Marcus moved first toward the porch, but I grabbed his arm. No police yet. She kidnapped. I know what she did. Then why are you still defending her? I looked at him directly. Because Lily's inside. That ended the argument. I walked into the cabin alone. Vanessa sat on the couch holding Lily asleep against her chest. Both of them looked exhausted. The second Lily saw me, she jolted awake and burst into tears. Daddy! She ran toward me so fast she nearly slipped. I dropped to my knees and held her tightly while she cried into my shoulder. The relief hit so hard it almost made me dizzy. For a few seconds, I forgot everything else. DNA. Marcus. Hospitals. Lies. All of it disappeared because my daughter was in my arms again. Then Lily whispered the sentence that shattered me. Am I still yours? I closed my eyes immediately. Behind her, Vanessa started crying again. I held Lily's face carefully in both hands. Listen to me very closely, okay? Nothing on this planet could stop me from being your dad. She searched my face like she needed absolute certainty before believing it. Then she nodded slowly. That was when Marcus stepped into the cabin doorway. Vanessa's entire body tensed instantly. Lily turned toward him uncertainly. Who is that? Nobody answered immediately. Marcus looked terrified suddenly. Not angry. Terrified. Like after 8 years of searching, he finally realized finding her was the easy part. Explaining all this to a child was the impossible part. Vanessa stood protectively. Don't. Marcus ignored her. His eyes stayed on Lily. My name is Marcus. Lily hid partly behind me. And honestly, I couldn't blame her. To her, this was just another stranger making adults cry. Vanessa suddenly looked at Marcus with pure desperation. Please don't take her away from me. Marcus stared at her for a long time before speaking. Then quietly, unexpectedly, he said, I already lost 8 years. I'm not going to make her lose her mother too. Vanessa broke completely after that. Not dramatic movie crying. Worse. The kind where a person finally stops fighting reality after years of holding it back. She sank onto the couch covering her face while every secret, every lie, every justification collapsed under its own weight. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I finally understood something clearly. This story never had villains in the simple way people wanted. It had broken people making catastrophic decisions while convincing themselves it was love. 3 months later, the court finalized shared custody arrangements under supervised conditions while the criminal investigation against the hospital quietly expanded behind the scenes. Marcus became part of Lily's life slowly, carefully, like somebody approaching a wounded animal without wanting to scare it. Vanessa entered psychiatric treatment voluntarily. And me? I spent a long time learning that fatherhood is not biology. It's not paperwork either. It's the person who stays through every ordinary moment that nobody else sees. Sometimes Lily asks why all the adults looked so sad that year. We tell her the simplest version. That a lot of people loved her very much. And sometimes love, when mixed with grief and fear and desperation, can become the most dangerous thing in the world.